morning.
Morning.
We're going to wait a minute or two
Mhm.
for everyone to join.
Yeah.
Shall we make a start and then people can get that later with the recording and
Yep. Otherwise,
yeah.
it's gonna. Yep. Okay then.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us this morning on this webinar on licensing in FNO. My name is Cruz Margaix. I'm a solution architect in Dynamics 365 FNO, working currently at Crosspoint 365 here in Spain. And well, here you've got my QR code from my LinkedIn profile. Please feel free to reach out to have a chat about licensing or about anything FO. And then with me today there is Rosana, who's going to introduce herself too.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Rosana Piñeiro from the Crosspoint 365 team, and I am a Dynamics 365 FNO infrastructure support engineer. And I'll be joining you today on this fantastic licensing webinar, side by side with my colleague Cruz. Also, you can see my QR to my LinkedIn profile also.
Yep. So, first question everyone may have in their minds is, okay, why are we talking about licensing today? Why everyone is talking about licensing in FNL these days? And the reason behind licensing being trending topic is that last year, Microsoft changed dramatically their approach to licensing. Whereas in the past, although licensing should have been named licensing assigned to users, the reality was that Microsoft was quite flexible with licensing. As long as a customer had the right number of licenses, it really didn't matter who were were using those licenses. But last year, Microsoft announced a change in their approach, and then from 15th January this year, every FNO user has to have the proper licenses assigned for the use they're doing of FNO. And this validation of licenses has been staged in a process that's based around the license renewal anniversary. We'll see with an example what this date is. It's not exactly the date when licenses should be renewed. It's actually the birthday of the licenses, right? So if we take this license renewal anniversary as the main date, 30 days before, Microsoft will be sending messages to users not compliant with licenses as soon as they log in into FNO. And 15 days after, those users that do not comply with the licensing requirements won't be able to access FNO at all. Because the process of ensuring every user has the proper licenses assigned is quite challenging and quite complex. Microsoft recommends to start the licensing review for every company about 90 days before. So let's clarify this concept about dates with a real example. So let's take a customer that signed a 3-year license contract on 20th July. So the renewal date is 20th July 2028, right? However, the anniversary date, the date that's going to be taken into account for the licensing checks, is the 20th July 2026. That means that starting 20th June, in a few days, users for this customer not properly licensed will start receiving these warning messages, and administrators will also be warned via email about this not compliance on licensing. But the most important date here is the 4th August, because from that day on, every user that has not had their licenses properly assigned won't be able to access FNO. So this customer should have started their license review back in April to have enough time to ensure everything is going to work fine and their systems are going to be up and running without any issues. So considering this example and what we've talked up to now, actually Microsoft's intention is to ensure that over a year, all their customers are compliant with licensing. So the expectation is that by 15th January 2027, every FNO user has their licenses assigned as they should. Now, Rosana and I have been conducting some of these license reviews for our customers as part of a service provided by Cruz 365. And from these reviews and also from our experience, we have identified some common challenges, not only in licensing, but also in security. So the first of the challenges is that in many occasions, we find that users have more permissions than actually needed. And many times this has a reason behind. And this reason is that over allocation of permissions is the easiest and quickest way of avoiding a user gets blocked doing their job. However, this overallocation not only means an increased license cost, but also higher risk and data exposure. Also because licensing was not critical for FNO, administrators never took licenses into account when assigning security. And it's important to understand that now, the higher the permissions are given to a user, the higher the license costs are going to be. So if the security assignment is not correct, we risk to be paying an extra cost for our licenses. Another common issue is the lack of periodic reviews. So more commonly than expected, permissions are assigned at the beginning of the project, at go live, and then users may get more permissions as and when they need them. However, very rarely these permissions are reviewed. So we see that users leave a company or users change roles, but they still keep the roles they were assigned or they have been assigned all the time. And finally, we've got this concept of the security audit. the security donut is what we use to describe this situation that we find in some customers where they're very conscious about the security risks and they make sure their systems are protected with firewalls and all the security tools. However, they leave a hole in the middle, which is the ERP, the main application, the application that keeps the most sensitive data they have. And security in F&O many times is undervalued and not prioritized as it should. So from these reviews that we've done for licensing, we actually found there are two options. We will see in a demo how Microsoft provides some reports on which licenses users should have assigned. So we can just go with it, just purchase the licenses Microsoft suggests. But many times this means higher cost, but also there's a potential inconsistency between the roles users have assigned and the actual usage data of the application. However, when we carry out a detailed review, we spend time, we use the proper tools to focus on actual usage, we find that the license costs are aligned with real needs, but also we get to have a more secured access where users only get access to what they actually need. Based on these reviews, we found that in terms of costs, if we follow Microsoft's suggestions, then the cost usually doubles. That means an increase of 100% of what customers are currently paying for licenses. And this gives us a margin of a 50% for improvement. So there's definitely room for improvement. So to give some sense to this, we are going to talk you through these topics today. So first, Rosana will talk you through the licensing model, type of licenses, and then we will dive into the security concepts in F&O and how security impacts directly licensing. Through demos, we will see the licensing report in PPAC, but also the governance tools in F&O. And then we'll go through some suggestions for license optimization. And then we'll see how we can monitor the application usage and how we can adjust the licenses. And we will finish with some key takeaways and some questions and answers. Through the webinar, please feel free to drop your questions in the chat or the Q&A section, and we will go through them at the end. So I'm going to leave you with Rosana, who's going to give you, well, share with you everything she knows about licensing, which is a lot.
Okay, then. Thank you, Cruz. We're gonna take a little bit of a review around everything around licensing. Okay, so if we're going to talk about licensing, we really need to know what actually the actual license model looks like nowadays. So this is what it looks like right now. So this licensing model has been updated with the latest prices, okay, from Microsoft from March. These licenses, please bear in mind that they are like monthly amounts, okay, monthly prices, but with an annual payment commitment. Okay, this payment plan is always that includes always a discount. So this is the most recommended method of payment to do if you're not already doing it this way. So Full user licenses consist. These are the full user licenses, as well as the limited licenses shown here in the model. So the full user licenses consist of the finance and the supply chain licenses. These both have a standard and premium editions. Okay, we'll discuss that a little bit later, the differences between those. We also have commerce, project operations, human resources as well in those full licenses. Most of these full licenses have a minimum of seats. What's the minimum of seats? Well, basically the smallest quantity that could be purchased of these licenses. So the majority of them have 20 seats, except for the premium version that actually have a 10 seats. Okay, so that's reduced in half for those purchases on the premium category. And also the human resources have a minimum of 5 seats, making it the most accessible point of entry. On the limited licenses, we do have the device and activity licenses, as well as the team member and human resources self-service. We'll be getting into all of those a little bit later on, just right now. Okay, first we need to talk, when we talk about full access, we have to talk about base and attached licenses for the modules that we've just mentioned, for the finance, supply chain, project operation, human resources, and commerce. So when a user requires a full access license, the first license that has to be assigned is the base license. This license provides the platform foundations and rights, and also is the highest in cost. Okay, so it is kind of important to determine which model to set as the base at the beginning. If after adding the base license, let's say the finance module, we see that we need to access other kind of modules like the supply chain model, this is where the attached licenses come out to play. So these licenses have the same functional scope than the base license, but a much more lower cost. So we really like those ones. So they do not include the additional platform rights. Okay, they access those platform rights that are included in the base license. Okay, and so these are the limited licenses we just talked about earlier on the model. And we're starting off with the activity license. It's a limited functionality at mid-range price, typically suitable for users with specific roles within the system. It includes certain capabilities for approvals, data entries, tasks and functions for operating point of sale devices. Then we have the team member license, also with a limited functionality, lower price this time. It's mostly read-only access, so tasks such as expense and time entries, purchase requests, and quality controls. Then we have the human resources self-service for personal management. Employees can manage their personal information, absence, the leave requests, and benefits, and managers can supervise teams with approval requests and manage employee activities. The device license is a license that is assigned to, as it says, as a device. So it's not assigned to a specific user. Typically used on shared workstations, and it can be used by unlimited number of users. So that's big advantage here with a shared account. Okay, ideal for warehouses, manufacturing facilities, and retail stores. Okay, as we said before earlier, we're going to see a couple of differences between what is the standard base license and the premium base license. So in the case of finance license, they both include the financial management, but the business performing planning on the standard plan is read-only access, so users can view, but they cannot do any changes at all. And on the premium plan, they can have full capacity to create and to edit. On the supply chain category here, we do have that as similar to the finance, but in this case with core inventory management and order fulfillment for demand planning. So on the standard planning, we do have the read access, no changes can be made, only read. And the premium plan has as well the full capacity to create and edit. Okay, so both finance and supply chain both have electronic billing transactions and entries. On the standard plan is 100 per month, and on the premium plan is double, which is 200 per month. So that's another advantage. The premium plan also includes 1,000 Copilot credits per user per month. That's one of the big advantages now. And also we can see the differences between the storage capacity on the base storage capacity now for the standard. It has an initial storage capacity at 90 gigs and the premium has an initial storage capacity at 125 gigs. And now that we've mentioned the Copilot credits, let's just clarify what they actually are. So they are a common currency used to run and extend the agents in Dynamics 365. The agents in Dynamics 365 are not licensed by like users. They are enabled exclusively through the Copilot Studio billing, where credits are assigned directly to the environment. The Copilot credits can be obtained, as we've just seen, from the compatible premium licenses. Sorry. So the premium licenses, such as we can also add on here, the sales, services, and finance and supply chain. And also we did talk about a little bit about the capacity. So just to let you know that from December the 1st, 2025, well, before this, I'll just clarify here. So before this date, the capacity for F&O and the storage for F&O and storage for Dataverse, they were both on each side, on not together at all. But now they are unified and they're in the they're in a single storage pool, which is it means basically it's much simpler to manage. It's because everything is in a single resource and it can be viewed and managed from one single place. So that's an advantage for that. So we're going to see what advantages that has created that unification as well. So for the standard products of finance, supply chain, etc., the database capacity, as we saw before, they have gone from 60 to 90. So that's an increase of 50%, which is quite a lot. And for the premium products, the increase is even more significant, reaching the 125 gigs. And the file storage is duplicated in size. So we see that has been quite a benefit there. Okay, then, so how do we calculate the capacity and what does it have to do with licenses? So we're going to see a quick example on the left-hand side. Let me see if I can get here we go. So here, let's just say we have a power up. We've purchased a power up and it's given us 15 gigs of storage capacity. And after that, we purchase a finance license, which gives us a base capacity of storage for 90 gigs. So we would think, okay, we're going to add these two up and we're going to have 105 gigs. That's fantastic. But no, that actually doesn't happen that way. So what basically happens is that the total default capacity corresponds to the product with the highest capacity. So it would be this one here with the finance, as you can see here. So how can we actually add on the capacity? So if we take this 90 gigs in base and say, okay, how can I add on to that? Well, every time we purchase these licenses here, like the commerce, the standard licenses, we're going to, in database, we're going to have a 5 gig increase. And in the premium licenses, it's a 10 gig increase. As well in files as well, we do have the same amounts as well here on this side here. So we can, the capacity can increase on those purchases. Okay, then I'm going to leave you with the security configuration with Cruz.
Thank you, Rosana. So what we are going to talk about in this section is how security is configured. So it's like a quick review of the security concepts in FNL, but the most important part is going to be how security relates to licensing. So as a reminder, security in FNL is organized as a hierarchy where the lowest element is the object being a form, report, a process, etc. Objects are grouped into privileges, which have been grouped into duties, and then we can have roles, which are groups of duties. So then what we do is we check these roles and assign them to users. So that means that security is not directly assigned to users, but through roles. So security is configured at role level, and then a user can have one or multiple roles. It's very important to understand that security in FNO is cumulative. So that means that if we've got a role A that gives read-only access to the castable form, let's say, and then we've got a role B, which gives write access, which allows to insert, update, or delete customers from the castable form. And we've got a user with role A and role B. The higher access level will be assigned to this user. So this user will be able to not only read, but write. And this is important when configuring the security assignments and also when determining the licenses. We'll see that, but before going to that, I also want to remind that Microsoft ships with a number of out-of-box security artifacts, security privileges, duties, and roles. But from the FNO front end, administrators can create new roles or customize existing roles, although the recommendation is always go with new ones and keep standard roles as they are. So, talking about licenses and the relationship with security. Again, when determining a license, the lower level is the object, is again the form, the report, the process. So we take any object, let's say a form, great access to this element will not require any license, but write access requires a license. And Microsoft determines which license it is. So taking this or having this in mind, the process to determine which licenses a user requires start from the object. So the object determines, depending on whether access is done for reading or writing, which is the license required for that object. Because a role is a group of objects via the privileges and duties, then a role will have a license required. Because a user can have one or multiple roles, then a user will require one or multiple licenses. And something that's also key for security, but now it's even more critical because of the license and the cost that they imply, is to review the licenses and the security assignment for every service update. So every service update will add new objects to the system, potentially can add new security artifacts. That means that for every service update, customers should be administrators should be reviewing and auditing their security configuration, testing the impact of the service update changes in security, and then update the roles, the custom roles accordingly. Because these changes introduced by the service update may mean a risk in terms of security, or may mean an increase in cost because of licenses. So now that we understand the theory, we are going to go through a demo on the license report in PPAC.
Okay, then just one point here is that we are showing a real example from a customer. So this example is in Spanish, but please do not worry, I will be explaining his section in English, and we have full understanding of that. Okay then. Sorry. There we go. Okay. So this is the overview of the PPAC interface. We're just going down to the licensing section and to the finance and operation tab. Here we will find at the top of the report 5 tabs where we'll see all the users that need the licenses or users that don't have a license assigned at all, users with a shortage or missing licenses, users that have too many licenses assigned, and users that do not require any licenses at all. From this report also, we can administer the licenses from the licensing pool on the Admin 365 portal. We can also export all this information from the report to a CSV. That's very helpful for analysis. And we can also copy a summary as well to our clipboard and just click and copy where in the location that's needed. Okay, then so this overview here we see of all the licenses, it really doesn't mean that we need all of the licenses. It's just going to give us information of those licenses that are required for our organization. So as you can see, there are like the commerce, human resources, they're all in 0 amount, so we're not going to attend to those. We're just going to make sure we focus on the licenses that we have the numbers required there. So from the supply chain management license, we have the base licenses and attached licenses. Here, they're base licenses. We can see that 20 are purchased and 20 are assigned, so we do not have any available at this moment, and the attached we do not have any. At the top, you can see it does say we need 6 users require this license. For the finance, we have 17 users that need this finance license. We have the base licenses at 0, so there's no licenses required here. Sorry, there's no licenses available here to assign, but there are 6 attached. And for the activity, we have 4 users that need this license, where we have 1 purchased, but 2 are in place, so we're looking at a -1 in available here. Well, the main focus here in the report are these 2 tabs here for the user that do not have any license at all assigned, and users that have missing licenses. So if we go into the users that don't have any assignment at all, we're going to see that every user ID is going to show which licenses would be necessary, the licenses they have assigned, which in this case they don't have any, and which licenses are recommended, which in this case are the same licenses that are required. So if we look a bit further into the finance license, we're going to actually see what environment, which is the production environment, it corresponds to. And also we're going to see a list of the roles and this user has assigned, and the license that it requires, every one of those roles. So if we look a little bit more deeper in the account manager, we're going to bring us to an interface where we're going to be able to see this role compared to every single license. And here we have the list of licenses. Okay, and every single license will show us how many entitlements are covered by this license and how many are not. In this case, we can see that finance and finance premium actually do cover 100% of these entitlements, leaving 0 uncovered. Okay, if we check the account manager, the same role, but for the supply chain, we can see that it does cover a lot of entitlements, but there are 786 that do not get covered. So how can we see which ones are not covered? So down below, we can filter on uncovered entitlements, and it will show us the list and the actual level of the access, read or write, that is reflected there. Okay then, well, that's the review from the PPAC. And now we're going to see the demo on the security governance module.
Thank Thank you. So this license report that Rosana has shown us on the BPAC is also available in a similar way in the FNO frontend from the security governance module. So let's see in a demo how this report works and what this module offers FNO administrators. So we've got this module here, and then we've got the license usage summary. And here we can see all the users with their required licenses based on their roles. So we can see this first user that has 4 roles. If we take the first one that says it needs a finance license and move to the second tab, then we can see here for this role and every license, which are the entitlements. So finance covers all the requirements for this role. If we take the next one, the budget clerk, it should have enough with an activity. If we go back here to the roles details, we can see that it's true that an activity should be enough, but finance also covers, and because finance is the highest one, then that one is going to be assigned. We also have this user with a basic team member, and then we've got this one who doesn't require a license, and we will see why. As part of the security governance, we also have this this tool that allows us to configure our custom roles based in business processes. So we can create different categories, and for each category, we can create processes. So let's create a process for credit limit management. For example, we can split the processes as we wish. And for each process, we can create tasks. Tasks can be created manually. So let's create a task for setting up credit limits. And then we can go manually and assign the entry points. Or we can use some of the automated tools like using an existing task or security objects. Or this one is very interesting, is using a task recording. So we can take a task recording from the task, take it here, import it, and then it will bring to this screen all the entry points that have been used in that task recording. So these are the items that I've used when recording this task. So from the task now, I can create a duty, I can create a privilege, and when all the tasks, from all the tasks and all this duty, I can also create a role. So this is a very interesting tool that has been introduced with this module, with the security governance module that has to be enabled through feature management, that allows us to configure security in a business process related way. So let's go with the optimization section, and Rosana is going to give us a few tips on how to improve our license management.
Okay then. So let's, if we're talking about optimization, we're going to start to explain the licensing cycle. Okay, what processes have to be achieved. So in the first step is the initial evaluation, the one that's been performed in the Power Platform Admin Center, we just seen in our previous demo. The second step is the analysis. This is perhaps the most important step in the cycle and is one that will have the greatest impact on cost reduction. So here the goal is to determine whether the lack of licenses is actually real, or whether if it's down to roles with excessive permissions that users do not really actually need because they're not even using those sections. So the goal is to determine. The best way to determine if we're to really understand what the users are using. Okay, so where they're actually accessing, what they're accessing, is to understand what entry points are being accessed by those users. And how can this be determined? Well, shortly I'll be showing you a demo of with a tool that's developed by Crosspoint 365 that can actually display this information. So once we do have those entry points and we know what the users are actually accessing, we need to go to our next stage, which is basically assigning those licenses that we've already determined that the license users need. So we'll go to our resource pool, check the licenses available, and do those assignments. In case we do not have those licenses available, we will be purchasing we'll purchase those licenses and assign to the users. So the final step of the cycle is the compliance status. It's a fully regulated state where the full licenses compliance has been achieved. So we've achieved that compliancy status. The cycle is ongoing all the time, and it requires constant monitoring to prevent future non-compliancy. Any changes made, any new users added can also create the non-compliancy status again. Okay, another part of the optimization is to identify the invisibles. These invisibles are users and roles exempt from licensing. Okay, we're going to go with the system admins, system administrators. So here we have to be careful of how many of these administrators are assigned. Okay, so not only on the security side, but also if these system administrators are actually doing business processes, because if they are, they need to be properly licensed, not only with the system admin. Devices and service users are also exempt from licensing as well, and the external users, collaborators with third parties who do not perform any business processes, they're not included in the licenses, but if any of those collaborators do actually touch business process, they will have to be considered more as internal users. Environments, the non-productive environments, sandboxes, development environments, they're also exempt from those licensing. We also have a list of roles that you can see here on screen that do not provide interactive or business functionalities. So as long as they're used correctly with the users, they will not need any license requirements. Okay, there's also a section in finance and operations, in the section of system administration invalid users. Here you can see a list. We can see the user's ID and the reason of why they're being invalid. Okay, in this case, we can see users that are not found in Enter ID or users with duplicate telemetry IDs. These invalid users, well, they may have roles assigned to them, and they require licenses, and they do appear in the PPAC licensing reports. These users will appear in the report in the PPAC only as a GUID. They do not have the user ID, so it's very important to determine what those GUIDs are, to what users correspond, so that can be regulated and not be included in the licensing report, generating report license requirements. Another interesting section in finance and operations on the government's security section is the activity expiry. So these are basically a list of users where they will tell you when the last time they logged onto the application, because these can be users that have roles assigned as well and also requiring licensing, but they haven't logged into the system for over a year. So these licenses really are not active users that require licensing. So if we identify these as well, we're looking at cost reduction on that side too. Okay, so Cruz is going to explain us about the temporary role management.
So the temporary role management is another feature of this security governance module. And this feature allows administrators to temporarily assign or revoke permissions for a user. So let's take this example in the screenshot. We've got David. David is a sales manager. He's got quite elevated permissions. We can see in the screenshot highlighted in this blue box all the roles that relate to their sales functions, to his sales role. Obviously, because this, as a sales manager, David will need a full license. However, he's going to go on holiday for a week and someone else is going to take over. So for someone to take over, this other person, Miguel in this instance, is going to need to have this sales manager role. And however, it would be inefficient to have Miguel with a sales manager role the whole year, consuming a full access license when he's only going to be a sales manager for a week. So with this temporary role management, administrators can temporarily remove the sales related roles for David and assign them to Miguel. And this will happen automatically through a batch job in F&O. So this is a good way to optimize licensing. However, be aware that this is a change that will happen in F&O, but not in the license assignment. So this has to go with some sort of alerts or some sort of automation to, for the same period, reassign the licenses in the admin center. Right, so we can use a kind of quick checklist to optimize our license and make the most of our investment in F&O. So first of all, check whether you've got some active users consuming a license which are no longer in the organization or don't use the application for whatever reason. Also check if there are integration users and these users are properly set up, because integration users, integration accounts in service to service communications do not consume licenses. Also check if you've got some users that perform functions that can be covered with those roles that don't need a license, what Rosana called the invisible. If you've got warehouses or point of sales and you use devices, check if there's a possibility of multiple users sharing a device and then using a device license instead of a per user license. And then the key question here is, are you actually paying for what your users are using? That means, do your users actually use everything they've got access for? And we've got Rosana to help us answer this question.
Okay then. So as promised, we're going to see the tool that will identify those entry points and the usage of the users. Okay, then, so once again, this is a real scenario, okay, real case scenario. It's also, the interface is in Spanish in sections, but I will be explaining section by section in English and hopefully give you the whole big picture of how the tool actually is working and the value that it can provide. Okay, then. So let's go. So I'd like to present you our licensing report. This report collects information from application insights, which in return extracts all the data from the Dynamics 365 finance and operations. Let's just take a quick tour around the interface. We'll see the license analysis per user tab. In this section, we'll analyze the user entry points, seeing what forms are accessed, what forms are not accessed, and what the licenses corresponding to those entry points are. Okay, so at the top tab here, we can see the dates we can choose the date for the period we would like to analyze. The licenses, we can do the filters here, the user ID, the name of the roles, add different selectors, and to enable and unenable. So we have 4 sections on this interface. We have the first one here, which is the where we will find all this useful information about the usage, which is actually the part where the users are accessing to those forms in the last 120 days. In the next section, we'll have the part where the users are not accessing, but due to the roles they have assigned, they can have access to this area, to these forms, but they're not using those, they haven't used those in the last 120 days. In this section here, we can see the configuration of roles. At the moment, there's no filters applied, so this is all the organization's roles are assigned. And also in the last section here are the costs per user. This gives us an overall of the costs being generated by user. So this can be very helpful. So first of all, we're going to do a filter per user ID. So we're just going to filter by user. Okay, as we've seen, we've seen a difference here in the reduction of the licenses required. Okay, so if we go into the finance license here, we're going to go a little bit more in depth and see what forms have been accessed that are related to a finance license. So here we have all the roles that are assigned to the user and have been in use to access the form. So the accounting manager role has been used to access this form here, the main account details. So the account payable manager has access to other forms. So if we compare the finance license here in this section of use, if we compare it in the non-use part where we have access due to the roles that we have assigned, but we haven't accessed at all, we can see that here it contains all of the forms that have not been accessed, that the user is available to access, but has not made use of those. Okay, so if we can always, here we're seeing that on the usage side, the supply chain management license did not appear, but on the non-use, it has appeared. So really, due to the roles we have assigned, we can access supply chain, but really we're not accessing. So this already gives us a hint of, do we really need this supply chain access? Also down below, we can see all the roles the user has assigned. So due to these roles is what is triggering what kind of licenses are required. And for the cost area in the following tab, we do have like the breakdown of the pricing due to the usage of the forms that are being accessed by the user. So here we'll be reflecting if we're using a base, if we're using an activity or a team member. Okay, so if we go down to the next tab, which is the access detail forms. Okay, here we're actually going to have a breakdown of how many times these forms have been accessed, and we've got different filters where we can go more in depth to actually see. Like here we can see we've just found here the form. We can see it in November. It's been accessed 14 times. In November, it's been accessed once, given a total of 15 times in these 120 days. This information could be very helpful due to we can find maybe access to forms that have been accessed only maybe once in 120 days. So that really does give us a more information about, is that role really indicated correctly for that user. So if we're using different filters, we can actually see the actual day that the forms have been accessed. This can be compared in different months to see if it's something that is recurrent, or if it's just something that happened punctually that month that they have had access to those areas. Also, we can see here a bit more graphically is the cost of these licenses. So here we can see in green is the actual use and the licenses we're actually using, and in the pink we're looking at a 22.23% of usage that's not being used by the user. So this license is over cost basically. So really the real value here is to really determine the usage of the use, where they're actually accessing, what licenses are required, what kind of costs we can have. So this is really thanks to this kind of tool, we can really complete the licensing cycle very more accurately. Okay then. Well, I'll leave you with Cruz with the demo about adjusting roles and licensing based on the usage.
Okay, thank you. So we know how to understand usage, and now what we do with this. So let's see, in this demo, we are going to see how we can adjust the licenses. So let's say we've got this user. This user has a requirement of 2 licenses, finance and project operations. If we take this role, resource manager, and we filter here, then we can say that, well, yes, this role is fully covered by the project operations license. However, the finance license that this user already needs for another role doesn't cover 35% of the objects. So we can come here and filter the objects that this role does not have entitlement for. And then what we can do is we can check this list and check which security objects are actually giving access to this object. So I took this list to Excel and then gave it to Copilot, who made a comma separated list that I can just copy and paste here, and then filter based on the name of the object in this security analysis screen, where I'm also going to filter by the role. So I can see that all these objects that need a project operations license belong to the same privilege, which is this resource manager privilege. So with that information, I can come back to this screen we saw before and create a new process, a new resource manager privilege, right? A custom one. And then I can bring the configuration from the object. I can filter here the resource manager privilege. And I'm going to import a new task, create a new task based on this privilege. And then this is going to bring, again, all the entry points. And then here I can filter again those that require a project operations license, are not covered by the finance license. And then I can go one by one and say I take this 3, check in the usage report, they're not used, I'm going to remove them. This one, it's only used for reading, then I'm going to remove write access, so it's not going to need a license. And then if I go one by one, checking usage, I can get my new privilege. And another option, quicker but not as accurate, is to go to the security configuration and then duplicate the role, selecting only the license we want. So I can create a license version of this resource manager privilege. So now we've seen the tools, and we'd like to share with you some key takeaways, the things that we would like to take away with you. So the first one is that time is critical. If you haven't done your license review yet, over the next 7 months, everything should be reviewed. So please be aware of time. Saving is possible. First thing is understanding the licensing mechanism. That's something you're already doing by joining us on this webinar. But now the next step is to audit. And ideally, use the services of the expert to help you reduce this cost. Crosspoint 365 offers an auditing licensing service. And in our website, you can see some of our success stories where customers have been able to save in their licensing cost. And finally, remember that reviewing licenses is a continuous process. It's something that doesn't end now. It's something that has to be done continuously to ensure you're not incurring in unnecessary costs. And we are running a bit late.
Yes, I'm afraid.
Yeah, but if everyone has time, we can stay longer. We've got a question from Radu. How do you manage the sudden changes in licenses required? Yeah, so another good practice is to review the licensing guide monthly. So obviously we cannot avoid the sudden change of mind by Microsoft. That's something we need to live with. But ourselves, we've established a habit. I particularly have a reminder every month to review the licensing guide. And well, it's a challenge, but there's not a magic wand for that. Just
Exactly.
yeah.
And also keep reviewing the PPAC as well, because any changes will be reflected there as well. And then you probably see the change for there first, and then go into the guide and say, oh, okay, right, it's been changed here. So yeah, these recommendations are useful.
Yeah, what we'd like to highlight is that licensing is not a one-off.
Exactly.
Operation is something that should be reviewed continuously, and just monitoring not only F&O, as you say, that's a very good point, but also messages in the message center, periodically reviewing the licensing guide, and being up to date with any news from Microsoft.
I hope that answered your question, Radu.
Any other question? But anyways, Rosana and I are available in our LinkedIn for any questions. Thanks, Rafael.
Thank you. Yeah, and if anything that you need any more inquiries around, please go ahead, reach out. No problem at all.
If there are no more questions, I think we're ready to close the session.
Let's close the session.
Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye.